let's start Caffeine questions today. Today we're going to talk about the nutrition in the back end of an Ironman. Okay, and that's to help David, who's having that sort of challenge, but I know that a lot of people have that challenge in an Ironman. And I think really success from Ironman racing comes from minimal fatigue by the time you get to the run caused by the swim and the bike. So the people that slow down the least in the run will have a better race overall and a faster time, because the Ironman really starts at the run, right? And it's tailored for runners, I would say. Triathlon, the non-drafting version of triathlon, is tailored for better runners. So if you're a strong swim biker and suck at the run, then somebody that sucks at those first two or is a really bad swimmer is going to probably still beat you if they can run past you in the run, which is really disheartening for, you know, people like myself who are a strong swim biker, can't run very well. But your nutrition can play a big component and big factor in that. And so a lot of fear for people in the Ironman comes from like really screwing up the nutrition in the run. So there are, I think, a few key factors and a few key points that are really important to get your head around and practice heading into an Ironman right throughout your lead up. And we're going to talk about some of those today. So the success in that back end definitely comes from minimal fatigue from the swim and the bike, and also having your gut functional still and you're not too dehydrated. So you're starting the run in a nice, well-fueled, not dehydrated state, and your stomach is sort of comfortable off the bike. And I think that's really important because there's minimal options when you run with nutrition. So eating on your feet is so different to eating on the bike. On the bike, your stomach is really still. It's quite stable as you ride. There's not the jiggling up and down that you get when you run. I also find that running is higher intensity, right? So you might be pushing really hard watts on the bike and smacking yourself, but running is 1 foot in front of the other, right? You can't go anywhere unless you put 1 foot in front of the other. Whereas the bike, you can pedal and coast for a bit, and then pedal and then coast for a bit. So you're still moving without the effort. Where running is literally 1 foot in front of the other. You can't glide in the swim or roll on the bike. You have to do the work to move and propel yourself forward. So the options for nutrition when you're running are much limited for a number of reasons. And one of the biggest factors is that your tummy is jiggling up and down. So you want things that are really easy to digest and not too difficult to chew or eat, right? So you're not really having a bar or a sandwich or even, like, I would never plant a banana in somebody's Ironman run, and they're available on course. Because you've got to chew it while you're breathing. It's much more complex, and so it takes a bit longer to digest and break down and absorb. I can't see who's watching. There's 4 people online now. Let me know that you're here. Write me a comment. Here we go. Sue's joining from Tamworth, New South Wales. Oh, here we go. Penny's here. Thanks, guys. Morning, Penny. Can you give me some tips for caffeine intake for the back end of an Ironman as well? Yes. Let me write that down so I don't forget, because my coffee hasn't kicked in yet. But yes, definitely we'll cover that. That's a good point. Okay, so the options for nutrition in an Ironman run are limited, right? So no sandwiches, no bars, like you're not stopping to have a meal. You want super fast, easy to digest and easy to chew options. So you're limited with liquids. So sports drinks, water, Coke. There's often Red Bull on course, these days, and that's usually diluted 50-50 with water. So they're the kind of liquid options, unless you want to carry something yourself as well. We'll talk about that in a second. Then you've got all of your gel options, and there's a huge range of varieties of brands and flavors, and there's no savory gel on the market at the moment. There used to be one, but I'm not aware of one at the moment. So if you know of one, let me know. There might be something in America that hasn't kind of reached here yet. Okay, so liquids, we've got gels, and then you've got things like blocks and chews. So Cliff blocks, Goo chews, Winners do chews as well. I'm sure SIS and Power Bar do as well. And they're kind of like the equivalent to a gel, but they're a jelly lolly. So they're like a sports gel, but solid. And they can be quite good because they're small and you can kind of drip feed them right throughout the run. Whereas a gel, you've got a massive hit of 20 to 30 grams of carbohydrate in one go. Whereas a block is only sort of 8 grams of carbs. So you can have lots of little bits sprinkled right throughout the run. So if you're not a seasoned athlete that's used to having big doses of carbs in one hit, then they can be a good option for you as well. And some of them are quite big. So I usually get people to bite it in half, and then I call it chipmunking. You put a little bit in each cheek back here, and you don't need to sort of chew it and digest it. Like you don't need to chew it to swallow it. You can kind of leave it there because your digestion of carbs does start in your mouth. So it'll sort of melt and dissolve a bit back here before you then need to sort of swallow it. But don't feel like you've got to be chewing them to get rid of them while you're trying to run and breathe. All right, and they are the main sort of 4 options for nutrition when you're running, right? So they're quite limited. And the other factor to consider with those is that they're all sweet. So like I said just before, I don't know of any savory gels on the market. I don't know of any savory chew type things. There are a variety of flavors though, and something like ginger can be a good palate cleanser in that back end of racing. So there's ginger blocks, or you can run with things like crystallized ginger, or Budrum do little ginger bear lollies, which are a good little thing to have as well, because they're basically straight carbs and they're little. And they're easy to just have like a little bit, like occasionally every now and then, to cleanse your palate and have something a bit different in your mouth. So that, I guess, yeah, that's one of the main factors with running, is that you're eating on your feet, your tummy's jiggling up and down, and you're limited with options for what you can have and digest in that run. The other thing with Ironman Run Nutrition is that there's always going to be something on course, right? And so it's your job to have a look at the athlete information guide and have a look how often the aid stations are and what's available. So every year the sponsors for sports products on course change. At the moment for Ironman, they're doing Morton gels and Red Bull, and I'm pretty sure they're doing Gatorade. Someone correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's just Gatorade. There is a really good Gatorade endurance formula, but it's not available in Australia at the moment for some reason. So I think they're trying to get that on Ironman course, but for whatever reason, it's not there. You can't get it here at the moment, but you could get it last year. So I think that's the plan. So if you're doing Ironman, your job is to make sure you practice with everything that's available on course. And that doesn't necessarily mean you have to have it, but if, I don't know, shit hits a fan and you've dropped everything, or you can't tolerate what you've bought and packed, then you know that if you grab something from the aid stations, you're going to be okay. And that's really important, that you want to have confidence in what you're doing. You're not doing something new on race day. So don't do what Sarah did, and she had like a full Ironman plan for me. She practiced it. It was well rehearsed. She was super comfortable and confident with it. And then on the day, for whatever reason, some old guy who's been an athlete for a long time told her to get on the bananas on the run because they were really good. And so she did that and then really suffered for it. So I guess that's probably my number 3 tip, is don't try anything new on race day. And that means being organized and prepping your plan early and practicing it over and over and over so that you're super confident with what you're doing out on the day. And then don't grab anything from the aid station that you haven't tried before, unless it's like dire straits and you really need it. Okay, or you've dropped your nutrition or something and you're grabbing something else as backup. But again, you should have tried what's on course, so you know that if you grab, say, a Morton gel, you've had it before, you tolerate it, it's not going to make you feel sick or anything like that. Now, with your Ironman Run Nutrition, this is where any sort of issues that you're having, this is where they'll rear their ugly head. So you might have a really good swim and a really good bike and you're super aggressive with your nutrition and your tummy's feeling good, and then you go and start to run and the body's just like, uh-oh. All the blood is diverting away from your stomach into your legs, and it's having trouble digesting what's in there. So one of the biggest components or factors with Ironman Run Nutrition is training your gut to absorb more nutrition while running. And that's something that takes a fair bit of time. Now, we don't know exactly how long. They're trying to do some research at the moment to figure out a bit of a protocol, but I would say that no matter what the guidelines are, it is going to be highly individual. So some people know that they've got a super iron stomach, right? Whereas others are much more sensitive. And so making sure in your training sessions, I work with Ironman athletes for 5 or 6 months before their event to make sure that we are doing the gut training heading into a race. So I've had a guy come and see me recently who was meant to be doing port, but thank God it's delayed because he's done no gut training whatsoever, and he's just going out there and trying to hit a certain amount of grams of carbs per hour because that's what he's read on the internet. That's what his mates are doing, and he's really struggling. He spent an hour vomiting after a race simulation a couple of weeks ago. So that is one of the worst case scenarios for somebody that has gone out and tried to have a whole heap of nutrition while running without the gut training component of that in his training build up, and then suffer the consequences of that. So one of the major things that you need to do with your Ironman run is train your gut to absorb more nutrition while running. And that needs to be a stepped process done with a sports dietitian who can calculate what your needs and requirements are and guide you specifically on what you need, not what your training buddy is doing or what the internet says. So like I've had so many people lately tell me that they're trying to hit a certain amount of carbs per hour and it is nowhere near what they actually need. So I guess that's the benefit of actually getting a sports dietitian in your corner, is that you get evidence-based advice that's just not shit off the internet. It's my biggest bugbear. So training your gut with your nutrition in the run. And then I would also add to that you need to train with your hydration in the running too. So how much you sweat is highly individual. And if you're doing an Ironman, I generally recommend you do a sweat test, or at least do some hydration testing with a sports dietitian to get an understanding of what your hydration is like, because it is highly, highly individual. And it also depends on what race you're doing, right? So it also depends on if you're doing port, which is generally a bit cooler, versus somebody that might be doing Cairns, which is generally really hot. And then we've got Busso at the end of the year, which is like crazy hot. Like a couple of years ago, there was a fire on the course. So we're talking hot. And if you're from Queensland, then you kind of understand hot racing. Mooloolaba was pretty hot, but throw 42.2 kilometers at you in the heat, then your hydration needs are very different to a cooler race or also a shorter distance race. So I would recommend for any Ironman athlete to do some sweat testing to understand, one, what your sweat rate is while running and bike. I generally do both bike and run because it's different. And then you can meet your hydration needs on the bike to make sure that you're stepping off the bike into the run, not already dehydrated, right? If you're already on the back foot when you go to start the run, there's a minimal chance you will catch up. Eating and drinking on your feet is much more difficult than it is on the bike. So your bike, I like to call the rolling buffet. That's your opportunity to eat and drink. Much easier to get food in and digest it and absorb it because your tummy still remember, but making sure that you don't overdo that too, and you are eating to what your needs are, rather than pushing the limits with that and ending up having a whole full stomach of food that's not digested, and then you go to run, and that's when you start to get nausea, bloating, gut pain, and vomiting. Is obviously the body's just like, we haven't digested this, the only way is out. So yeah, a couple of big key points to know and understand there is gut training with nutrition and understanding of what your hydration needs are, and also training with that as well. So the aid stations generally on Ironman are every 2.5 kilometers. So you have the opportunity to drink relatively frequently. The thing is though, with the cups that they give you, they're quite small. It varies how full they are. So you've got no guarantee of the volume of the liquid going in there. And then most of the time you spill half it on you anyway. So having an understanding of that and practicing that is also really important. Or your other option is running with some hydration in, either in your hand or in your belt, fuel belt or something. You can get bottles that sit on your hips or on your back to guarantee an amount of fluid. And then you know, getting top ups or whatever from the aid stations. So that could be an option too if you want to carry your own sports drink and you don't want to use what's on course, is you carry your own with you. A lot of people suffer from cramping in the run at an Ironman, and it's worth exploring that too. Like if that's part of the struggle, is that, you know, cramping is a big issue, then definitely work with a sports dietitian and explore what's going on there. So is it dehydration? Is it electrolyte imbalance? Is it just fatigue, or is it bike setup even? You know, you're spending a long time on the bike, 6 hours as an average time on the bike, and then you've got to stand up and get those muscles to work in a different like length. So getting an understanding of what your issues with cramping are and fixing that, because again, you know, the person that has most success in an Ironman, does a faster race, is going to slow down the least while running. And part of that is preventing cramping, whatever the cause is. So that's another thing that I would tackle if you're having issues with run nutrition. All right, Penny, caffeine options for you. So there are loads of caffeine options. There's always Coke plus or minus Red Bull on the course, and both of those are liquids, carbs, electrolytes, and caffeine. So it's kind of like a supercharged sports drink. And generally in the back end of an Ironman, after you've been chewing on sports products for, you know, the good part of 7-8 hours, something like Coke or Red Bull is actually a really nice change. And I've heard a lot of people say that they wait to take Coke because they think it's better if they do that. But I would say definitely don't wait. Just get on it early and get on it often if you want to use it, because it will save you. So caffeine lowers your perceived rate of exertion. So it makes exercise feel not as hard. So definitely get on it early and often, whether it's Coke or Red Bull. Some other options, Penny, might be a no-dose tablet, like, you know, the truckies take. But definitely practice that in training. Don't do that for the first time on your race. Also, there's Revy strips. You can get those from the chemist, and they're like little mint wafers that you can put on your tongue. And then a whole heap of gels and blocks have caffeine in them as well. So you might find a particular type of gel or flavour of block that you like that you're using for your caffeine too. So there's plenty of options. It's just about figuring out what your overall plan is. So more caffeine is not necessarily better. In fact, it's not better. And you want to get enough caffeine that meets your requirements and the lowest dose possible. So we're not trying to get as much caffeine in the system as we can. So definitely, work through with the sports dietitian what your caffeine requirements are and how you're going to get it based on your overall plan. And then, finally, I would say, and I said this in the beginning, is don't try anything new on race day. Make sure you're well practiced and confident with your plan. You've slowly built it up over your Ironman lead-in, over that, 20 weeks or whatever it is that you're doing. You're doing gut training, you're working out what your hydration needs are and building up to drinking that volume while you run as well. You've got how much carbohydrate you're having, how much caffeine you're having, to make sure that you're setting your race up for success. And that starts, days before your race with things like carb loading, what you do for your pre-race breakfast, your overall hydration and sodium needs, and then making sure that your bike nutrition is really dialed into, and we're not overdoing it there or not undercooking yourself there as well. So I hope that helps answer your questions or challenges, David, with back-end Ironman nutrition. I think there's a few key points there. So minimal fatigue from the swim and bike, and having your nutrition really dialed in for those too, so that you're starting the run in the best possible state you can. You're not dehydrated, you haven't already got a full tummy, you're not already cramping. Thanks, Sue. Thinking about the options that are available to you on the run. So easy to digest, little gels, blocks, sports drinks, water, Coke, Red Bull, those types of things. That kind of the only options really. I wouldn't recommend a sandwich or a bar. or a banana even. Make sure you practice with what's on course, and that's not new to you at all. It is like, even if you're not going to use it, at least get some products to try so that you know that if you grab it, it's okay. Training your gut right through your training block, and that needs to build slowly. And then you build up to your Ironman Race Nutrition, and then it drops back down again for off season, right? You don't stay there. Like, you want to have the fluctuations across your year so that you've got a periodized approach to your nutrition. You're not doing the same thing all the time. Do some sweat testing and some hydration testing with like a qualified professional. Don't do yourself at home and post back kits. They're completely inaccurate. There are so many components of sweat testing that you need to get right to get the right answer. Like, there are, every single step of the way you could F it up. So making sure you're doing that with somebody, you're not trying to do it yourself at home, no matter how legit you think you are. I've got a guy that's recently done that, and I have no doubt that he F'd it up because of the results. So yeah, don't do the hydration testing, sweat testing stuff yourself at home. Do it with somebody, with sports dietitian, or in a lab, depending on where you are. So if you want to know about sweat testing, send me a message and let me know where you're from, and I can guide you with where to actually go to do that. Explore why you're cramping if that's a problem for you. Not everyone cramps, but if you're a cramper, you definitely know. So understanding why that's happening, and it's not necessarily that you need to eat more salt. I'm really sick of people just smashing salt tablets because they think that's going to help. That's not going to help. And we've talked about caffeine a bit for you, Penny. Thank you. Good prompt to talk about caffeine options when you run. And I guess, final point is, don't try anything new on race day, okay? You're not going out and testing out new products. You're not grabbing things from the aid station you're not familiar with. An Ironman is a big dance, and part of training your legs to do that distance is really getting your nutrition training done as well. You need to train your gut to absorb that nutrition so that you're confident on race day that the body's going to handle it. So that's my short, sharp. Hopefully we're not too much longer than 20 minutes. I'm not going to see till we stop this, but that's what I would do, like some guidelines around back-end Ironman Race Nutrition. So I hope that's helped. Let me know if you're still here, if you've got any further questions, or if there's anything that resonated with you. I will send this replay out in email this afternoon, hopefully. And feel free to watch it back if you're doing an Ironman. If there's any other further questions that you have, send me a message, and let me know how you go. The people that are doing Port Mac, I'm sorry, you've got an extra 5 months of training to nail down some of these nutritional components if you haven't done that yet, but you potentially want to have a bit of a break now. Talk with your coach around that. I wouldn't suggest doing like 10 months of prep if you have been doing that already. Hey, Liv, welcome. We're just about to sign off, Liv. You might have to watch the replay. All right. Any last questions, send me a quick message. Otherwise, I'm going to hit stop and I'll send out the email replay this afternoon. Thanks for joining me, guys. Happy coffee and questions. I need to finish my coffee now. And I'll see you next week.